Joining us now is Tom Fitton. Tom is the president of the leading government watchdog group, Judicial Watch. Tom, the United States has done to this point almost nothing to support Ukraine. NATO and the EU are doing as little as well. Germany actually insulting Ukraine by sending 5,000 helmets to them. So much weakness in the West. Your reaction to the Russian invasion and the strong Ukrainian stand against Putin?
You know, I'm old-fashioned. I blame Putin for invading Ukraine, to be clear. But he's taking advantage of a situation that in part has been created by the incompetence and corruption and moral obtuseness of this administration.
Joe Biden and his administration have been distracted at best, inept in their entirety at worst, and weak. Mr. Biden is weak. Watching the press deal with him today, they treated him as they should have been treating him from the outset, as a man who is not a successful communicator and a man who is obviously not interested in the public's right to know what his government is doing.
Yeah, I mean, there are two big issues here. There's the president's personal failures, right, and policy failures.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this, in my view, and the epiphany as you kind of explain what's happening, is that we have the failure of our whole national security and foreign policy establishment. That we spent trillions, if you want to include the Defense Department, trillions on to prevent exactly this sort of catastrophe we're seeing in Ukraine right now. Let's go back 2 years ago. Remember what's going on 2 years ago in our Ukraine embassy in Kiev. They were focused on spying on you, Lou. Remember, they're gathering
vividly.
They were gathering you and others, critics, social media posts to track what you were saying about the corrupt ambassador there, Yovanovitch, and Soros and Biden and company.
Right.
So that's what our State Department was doing in Ukraine 2 years ago. And right now, we don't have a State Department in Ukraine because we had to flee the country. Do you think the two are connected? I do.
Do you think that plays a role in the policy? I mean, this is an interesting question you pose, because does that relationship play a role in Biden administration foreign policy, specifically with Ukraine?
The Putin propaganda is that Ukraine is a vassal of the United States to be used for corrupt purposes. How does Biden's corruption there not fall into that? Look, Judicial Watch has documents showing that the State Department goons that were targeting Trump for trying to blow the whistle on what Ukraine was doing with Biden in terms of corruption and Russia and things like that, they knew that Biden was compromised. They talked about Russia trolling Biden. He's going there 3 days before President Trump's inauguration in 2017. A Russian-linked newspaper is saying, is he here to protect his business interests? And one of the officials there, remember Mr. Kent, who testified against Trump, emails Yovanovitch, the ambassador, this is Burisma is the gift that keeps on giving. So they knew he was compromising our situation there. So you have this corruption involving U.S. government officials, Vice President Biden, through his son Hunter. You had Hunter taking in money from the wife and widow of a Russian oligarch. Remember, Burisma is a Ukrainian company, but it was a Russia-leaning company that was run by a member of the cabinet of the Ukrainian leader who fled to Russia after he was ousted. So Biden was compromised 6 ways to Sunday by Putin, and I'm sure Putin looked at all of that and calculated, what do I have to worry about if I want to do what I want in Ukraine? Because heck, as I said, the propaganda was the United States was doing what they wanted. Why can't I do it quite literally?
A great point, a great series of points. And it also plays into the answer to the question that was asked repeatedly of President Biden today, and that is, why not put sanctions against President Putin today? Why not today? And the answer was never forthcoming. Perhaps Tom Fitton has provided an answer.
Yeah, and that goes to the general policy approach of the deep state and our foreign policy establishment and such, which is the one, which is weakness in the face of aggression. And, look, I don't want to see a war with Russia over Ukraine, but we should have made it clear to Russia there would have been severe consequences beyond sanctions, which have a demonstrated record of not deterring aggression. I don't necessarily have the solution. But one way to protect yourself in terms of the policy implications of what happened in Ukraine is to show that you're strong by bolstering your defense, increasing your energy capacity, not undermining it through green energy initiatives that tear the legs out from anyone who wants to stand up against Putin's aggression, like in Germany and here in the United States. There are sorts of things you do to strengthen the West as opposed to weaken it. Right. Through the socialist green energy and as I say, corrupt policies that really just serve to advance the goals of certain policy, extremists, as opposed to defending our national security. I mean, if there's one thing we can conclude now, green energy is a national security risk in these initiatives because they've made us weak and they've made the West weak in the face of Russia aggression because the green energy initiatives in Germany and elsewhere have made them more dependent, ironically, on Russia than less dependent. And, it's a long ball game, and we ain't playing it well.
No, to be kind, we're not playing well. This administration, though, is sort of the derivative of the Obama administration, and the following these sort of curves that fit into governance in America. This curve starts in the Obama administration and rests now in the Biden administration, and it's lead from behind. It right. is a ridiculous assumption that you can get away with misjudgments like, yes, we're all about green energy, and devil take the hindmost if you think that we lose all of our fossil fuel and petroleum industry because we don't really need them, because we are pure of heart and we are seeking the ideal and a sustainable utopia, which isn't going to be available for decades, for crying out loud. Do you agree?
I agree. And Putin looks at our priorities, whether it be on energy, on our military with critical race theory, and the other social engineering programs going on in our military. He sees a corrupted White House. He sees President Biden's health challenges, which are evident to everyone, but we're not allowed to talk about evidently here in Washington, D.C. But you can bet Putin notices it. You can bet all of our friends and allies and adversaries see this. And it's led to, as I said, I blame Putin for invading Ukraine, but we have to understand that Putin responds to the weakness he perceives. And I think this aggression is evidence of that.
And in that weakness, there are some overt messages, including the time when he sought it, I guess, to appear as though it was a mistake when he referred to a minor incursion that we'd simply have to talk about. That was, in the minds of many, and I think probably correctly, a signal to Putin that a minor incursion would be quite fine with this president. It's very difficult to understand what Joe Biden is doing as president, isn't it?
Yeah, many of our friends have said he cares more about Ukraine's borders than our southern borders. I don't believe he cares about either. I think how else? It seems like our policy has almost encouraged this type of incursion, to put it charitably, both in Ukraine and obviously we can go on at some length about the invasion in our southern border, but the transnational left and progressives, they don't care about borders. They care about their policies being promoted, and Putin is offensive to them because it gets in the way of their agenda, as we were talking about a little bit before we went on air here. John Kerry was upset that it's distracting from his climate change agenda. These folks are a menace to our national security with their priorities.
John Kerry, as Tom Fitton is saying, said this today about President Putin. I hope President Putin, imagine this, in the middle of an invasion of Ukraine, saying, I hope President Putin will help us to stay on track, those are direct quotes, with, quote, what we need to do for the climate, end quote. Now, we can talk about that being rich in irony, a tone-deaf John Kerry is nothing new. But when it is also juxtaposed against one of the most frightening developments of the day, among many, and that is Russian forces capturing the radioactive still and deadly dangerous Chernobyl nuclear power plant, according to the Prime Minister of Ukraine. They have taken charge of it. And to think that we have Kerry braying about Putin staying on course about what we need to do for our climate. If Europe wasn't frightened before, then I don't know what it would take to reach both their imagination and their hearts.
Well, for the corrupted ideologues that are running our country, the jobs that the American people expect them to do, which is to protect our national security, preserve our defense, preserve economic liberty, make sure that we don't have to worry about a dangerous Putin or a dangerous China. They see all that work as a distraction because they prefer to be pushing this radical climate change agenda, their CRT agenda, you name it. And they see the basic work that the American people expect from their elected leaders as a distraction, as opposed to their core mission.
Exactly. But it appears he is on very bad footing to deal with the Ukrainian invasion by Russia.
Yeah, I was thinking, I always thought it was very interesting to see on Twitter everyone talk about, well, I got COVID. I'm glad I got the vaccine, which I thought was kind of an odd.
It is a brain twister, isn't it?
Right. And now that's been replaced as Putin invaded Ukraine. I'm glad Biden's president. I'm glad Trump isn't president, even better.
Yeah.
It's this odd construct we're supposed to buy, but it's typical for the left. Now, when they killed our people in Benghazi, it was a testament to Trump, to Obama's leadership. That's what we were told by the White House.
Exactly.
When Biden surrendered in Afghanistan and killed Americans on the way out through his ineptitude and abandoned, to this day, Americans there, it was a success. And now Putin's invasion is supposed to be treated as a success in Biden keeping our allies together while not actually able to prevent the carnage we're seeing today in Ukraine. I mean, we talk about these issues. Sometimes we laugh about them, but this corruption and incompetence, it's getting people killed unnecessarily. And it's these poor innocents in Ukraine. Ukraine didn't deserve to be invaded. Ukraine is not a perfect country. It didn't deserve to be invaded. It didn't have to happen if we had better leadership from the United States and the left. But, maybe it was inevitable because these are the consequences of a failing West that is more focused on lining its own pockets and advancing extremist agendas as opposed to, as I say, doing what it's supposed to do, which is to secure its citizens and ensure strong national defenses.
And there's one other irony in this that doesn't escape us, and that is President Biden actually bragging about when asked about how did he know that the invasion was imminent when he said that, 10 days ago. I hadn't even called the invasion date as last Wednesday incorrectly again. He said we have an intelligence apparatus of great significance, or something to that effect, bragging about the intelligence that he was getting, which was pretty good. But for him to be bragging about the intelligence on this, one would have hoped that the intelligence agencies would have had a better sense of this, gotten something of a whiff of it 6 months ago rather than 6 days before its occurrence. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and invasions like this don't happen overnight. That's why we go back to the earlier part of our conversation where we exposed at the State Department when it came to Ukraine and our military establishment in the person of Mr. Vindman, right?
Yeah,
Was
Colonel
more
Vindman.
focused on destroying Trump for highlighting corruption in that area involving U.S. government officials, as opposed to and spying on Americans to do what it looks like.
Yeah,
So why would we think? We knew what their focus was until Biden came in on destroying Trump. Their focus still is kind of on destroying Trump, in addition to advancing their radical extremist agenda. And and then they decide to listen in on Putin when it becomes clear that he decided to invade after we has 130,000 troops on the border. Maybe we should focus on that then now. I mean, Lord help us. Lord help us. And what's concerning about this is these folks who've lied to us about Russia for years, we're expected to now trust them now.
Well, I've helped.
Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor, Hillary's guy, lied about Russiagate. Now he's running our Russia policy for Biden. Again, Lord protect this country.
Indeed, Tom. We need all the help we can get. Tom Fenton, thanks for being with us and for your views. Tom, president of Judicial Watch, a great organization devoted to protecting America and Americans. Thank you for being with us here on the Great America Show. God bless you, and God bless America.
Join us again tomorrow for the Great America Podcast. Stay in the fight. Truth, justice, and the American way will prevail against all enemies, against all odds. Odds.